Hey, Neal, how you doing, man?
Not too bad.
Your new book, like your other books, just awesome. Seveneves, it's out now. Tell us about the book and what inspired the story, because holy crap, there's a lot of story here.
Well, I always wanted to write just a big, kind of old school, hard science fiction epic. And when I was a kid, I used to read space ark novels, where a global catastrophe forces the people of Earth to build an ark. So it was kind of rattling around in my head for a long time, but I had this idea about 10 years ago, and a couple of years back, after tinkering with it for a long time, I just said, what the heck, I'm just going to sit down and write it.
Okay, now you say a couple years ago, like seriously though, when you sit down and focus on a story like this, it is a super long book. It's almost 900 pages. How long does it actually take you to outline this idea and then physically sit down and write it? Because it seems to me like if I were to write a 900-page space odyssey like this, it would probably take me 47 years and I would still never complete it.
Yeah, well, in my case, I had been thinking about it for a long time, so I had written little bits and pieces of it, and I kind of had in my head the general arc of how the story was going to go and what was going to happen when. And that's actually the hard part, at least for me. So once I decided to get serious about it and start just writing it as a book, it came together in a couple of years, I would say.
Okay, a couple of years. That's not bad at all.
No,
especially for a story like this.
Yeah, exactly. That seems pretty good for that.
Well, if you think about it, 900 pages. If you write, say, 10 pages a day, that's it adds up. It adds up in a hurry.
Sure.
Oh, for sure. When you break down the story of this book, the average person will see a book like Seveneves and will be like, wow, what an outrageous idea that is. But when you think about it and you look into the future and everything, how feasible do you think the concepts and the ideas you present in this story really are? I mean, could this type of thing actually happen on a certain scale?
Well, the initial event is the moon suddenly breaking up for no reason, and that is, that's a stretch. But there's kind of a rule of thumb in books and movies that, you can get away with almost anything on the first page or in the first 10 minutes of a movie, and people will say, oh, okay, fine, whatever. But after that, once you've established the rules of the story and the universe, you better stick to those rules or people are going to notice it, and that's the point where they put the book down or walk out of the movie theater. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. The exact mechanism of the moon blowing up is kind of outrageous, but it gets us off to a good start.
Yeah, definitely. Now you said it. Our next question was, when you write a book like this, it definitely has that cinematic element to it. Do you see something like this, or maybe it was a goal for you to maybe work this into a movie deal? Because this story would fit on the screen pretty perfectly.
Yeah, it could happen. It's a big subject for a movie. Typically a short story is about the right size to adapt into a movie. And so this would have to be a series or a TV or something like that. But yeah, it would certainly be fun to be able to translate these things into some images on the screen.
Yeah, and is that ever a goal when you write a book or not? Or would that just be an amazing bonus if someone was to be like, hey, we want to pursue this as a screen project?
I think you've got to think of it as a bonus, because you've got to give the reader, what they bargained for in the way of a real book, and sometimes, not that often, but occasionally you'll pick up a book that when you read it, you kind of are thinking in the back of your mind, this kind of sounds to me like a screenplay. So rarely I think somebody will write a book only with an eye towards it maybe becoming a movie, but for the most part, I don't think that's how writers like to operate.
Yeah. Now, you have had a successful career writing books and things like that. When you put out a novel like this, it took you a couple years, 900 pages. I mean, that takes a lot of focus. Are you already working on like the next book idea, or are you pretty much still sitting with this one? Is it tough to write something else after something like this?
It is tough. I used to wait until the previous one had blown over, and then that ends up taking like a year off, because it takes that long for the book to come out. And then I sort of started thinking about the fact that I'm 55 years old.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not old, but it's not young. So now I'm trying to kind of pick up the pace a little bit, and during that gap time before the book comes out, try to start in on another one. And I have done that, and I'm a couple hundred pages in on another one right now.
Dang, man.
Yeah. Well,
keeping it going. Well, we want to learn a little bit about you on a personal level here, because Gunner and I here, we're very into science fiction, and especially pretty much anything to do with space. We're always super into that. But it seems like a lot of people like us who are into these type of things musically really enjoy progressive metal music. Do you fall into that group or not?
Well, when I was a kid, a teenager in Ames, Iowa, I had friends who were just rabid fans of like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I listened to that stuff a lot when I was a kid, and so that's a long time ago, man. But I think those guys were important in kind of the early era of that kind of music.
Oh yeah, they absolutely were. So like, what kind of music are you into?
Lately I've been listening to a lot of kind of electronic stuff. I've been sort of, I use it almost as soundtrack movie or soundtrack music for when I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my weird little quirks is that lyrics really distract me when I'm trying to work with words.
Yeah, I suppose.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and for some reason, spoken like rap lyrics are 100 times worse than sung lyrics. So any piece where suddenly someone breaks out into rapping, even for a few lines, just it's like a spike to the head. I can't. It totally takes me out of what I'm doing. So I tend to listen now to a lot of electronic stuff that has no. I don't have to worry about someone throwing confusing words at me.
See, now that is awesome life advice. If you want to write an epic novel or you want to work on anything, listen to electronic music because you're not going to get distracted. That's life advice right there.
Just dance. Just got to dance, baby,
Ambient soundtrack stuff, yeah. I'm not proud, but it seems to work.
Well, right on, man. The new book, Seveneves, is awesome. Can't wait to see what you do in the future. And, the thing I love about this book is it's just everything that it says it's going to be and then a whole lot more. And if you're looking to get yourself into an epic story, well, it lives up to the hype. This is definitely a great book. So thanks for taking the time with us today, and we can't wait for the next project.
Hey, it was fun. Thanks for reading it, and rock on.